My name is Robert DeGruchy, and I'm excited to present my pilot improvement project on increasing financial literacy for Indigenous students in Washington State. Financial literacy is not just a skill, it's a lifeline. In today's world, financial decisions impact every facet of life, from education to retirement. Yet for many Indigenous communities in Washington State, access to culturally relevant financial literacy education remains a significant challenge. This issue is not unique to Washington. Studies by Anna-Maria Lusardi and Carly Urban have shown that financial literacy is disproportionately low among communities of color and underserved populations across the United States. My problem of practice focuses on Native American students identified as American Indian and Alaska Native in Washington State. In addition to the challenges faced by Indigenous communities in the state, it's important to recognize the broader educational landscape for American Indian and Alaska Native students across the country. Nationally, Indigenous students comprise approximately 1% of the K-12 public school population, totaling around 459,000 students. In Washington, 12,823 students comprised 1.2% of the population in the 2024-25 school year. Indigenous students encounter significant educational disparities. The high school graduation rate for Indigenous students in public schools was 70.8% in Washington State. This is compared to the average of 82.8% for all students. Indigenous students have the lowest graduation rate for any population. Additionally, 28% of Washington State's Native students are below the poverty line, while only 14% of all Washingtonians are. These statistics highlight the systemic challenges that Indigenous communities face, underscoring the need for targeted interventions and culturally responsive education to bridge these gaps and promote equitable opportunities for Indigenous youth. As highlighted by Blue's work on Canadian First Nation communities, a significant challenge is the inefficient use of limited financial resources intended to support Indigenous populations. Financial literacy programs often fail to meet their intended impact due to a lack of cultural relevance and integration into the communities they aim to serve. This wasteful pattern highlights the critical need for culturally grounded solutions. My problem of practice is focused on meeting the needs of Indigenous students through existing mechanisms at the state level. A primary barrier to effective FLE implementation is limited and ineffective teacher preparation. This barrier is compounded for Indigenous students through the lack of culturally responsive curricula and limited professional learning focused on the needs of their communities. Current resources often reflect a generalized one-size-fits-all approach that disregards the diverse cultural contexts in which students live. This undermines its effectiveness and limits its potential to close gaps. State-level initiatives, such as Washington's 2 SSB 5720, are designed to support the implementation of financial literacy in the state. The measure was supported in both houses of the legislature unanimously, showing the support for a financial program statewide. Enacted in 2022, this legislation requires each school district, charter school, and state tribal compact school to adopt goals for expanding financial education instruction by 2023. It also provides $2 million annually for the 2023-24, 24-25, and 2025-26 school years. The Financial Education Public-Private Partnership plays a critical role in these efforts by connecting school districts with these grant dollars. Our project, built on the Building Native Communities curriculum developed by OESTA, aims to break this cycle. By leveraging a curriculum tailored to the cultural context of Indigenous populations, we ensure that financial literacy education is both relevant and impactful. OESTA's 2019 report underscores the curriculum's effectiveness, citing a 40% increase in the adoption of spending plans and a significant rise in confidence managing financial products for Indigenous communities. Following Langley's guidance in the Improvement Guide, our initiative employs a clear workflow for effective implementation. The process begins with research to identify local education agencies, LEAs, serving the largest number of American Indian and Alaska Native students. This phase involves detailed data collection and engagement with community stakeholders to establish a shared vision. Next, we adapt the Building Native Communities curriculum to local cultural contexts, ensuring relevance and impact. In the curriculum development phase, educators collaborate to customize resources aligning with both state standards and community values. Educator training workshops follow, which focus on building capacity, fostering peer support networks, and incorporating feedback loops. These workshops use active learning techniques to enhance understanding and engagement. Implementation then takes place in classrooms, supported by ongoing coaching and mentoring to address any emerging challenges. Finally, Structured feedback mechanisms, including surveys and focus groups, allow for continuous refinement and scalability. Building on the principles outlined in Langley, we utilize root cause analysis to identify and address systemic barriers to financial literacy education. Challenges are categorized into 4 key areas. People, limited access to culturally relevant training, leading to disparities in educational delivery. The processes, fragmented grant application systems and gaps in stakeholder engagement. Materials, a scarcity of resources tailored to Indigenous students' needs and experiences. And the environment, persistent historical marginalization coupled with inconsistent funding and support. Each of these categories is analyzed through iterative cycles, incorporating stakeholder feedback, design culturally grounded solutions that promote equity and accessibility. By mapping these barriers and their underlying causes, we ensure that interventions are targeted and sustainable. A key component of our strategy is the driver diagram, which visualizes the primary and secondary factors that influence our goal of increasing financial literacy among American Indian and Alaska Native students. The primary drivers include culturally relevant curriculum, ensuring that resources align with Indigenous values and traditions. Educator capacity building, providing robust professional development opportunities. And community engagement, partnering with families and local leaders to reinforce the learning. Secondary drivers expand on these foundational elements, focusing on localized adaptation of the curriculum, interactive training methodologies, and sustained collaboration with stakeholders. The decision to create the Financial Literacy Education Workshop with OESTA stems from their expertise in developing culturally grounded curricula. Their Building Native Communities framework not only addresses financial knowledge, but also integrates cultural principles for Indigenous students, making it uniquely situated for this initiative. Our change theory is rooted in systems thinking and emphasizes leveraging small, iterative improvements to achieve systemic change. By addressing primary and secondary drivers through targeted interventions, we aim to create a self-sustaining cycle of improvement that enhances financial literacy education and empowers Indigenous communities. This approach aligns with Langley's guidance on using change theories to guide strategic planning and execution. Most of the FLA resources adopted by districts do not meet the needs of Indigenous students. Additionally, the resources offered by the state through the Open Educational Resources OER portal are lacking the needed materials. These gaps are addressed through the supporting culturally aligned curriculum development driver. OESA's BNC curriculum displays that the necessary resources exist. The project helps with putting those tools where they are needed. There is also a lack of culturally relevant training in FLE and sufficient collaboration with Native stakeholders. Linking to the primary driver, capacity building for educators, training in culturally relevant pedagogy can address gaps in teacher knowledge and increase self-efficacy for instructors. Existing stakeholders in Native education must be involved in the expansion of financial education in the state. The lack of targeted districts participating in the grant opportunities highlights foundational issues addressed by the project. FEP must work intentionally with stakeholder groups connecting to the community and tribal engagement driver. Stronger processes will build trust and collaboration needed to improve the expansion of culturally relevant financial education. The funding from 2 SSB 5720 is temporary, and funding ends at the end of the 2025-26 school year. This limitation points to the need for advocacy and sustained funding for culturally relevant financial education. The sustainable support and funding driver points to the needs of legislative support for culturally relevant financial education. Coordinating advocacy towards sustainable funding will provide the long-term support to meet the project's goals. By addressing the root causes impacting financial education for Indigenous students, this project will lead to the needed improvements. Training in culturally appropriate financial education will increase educator knowledge and confidence, which provides effective financial literacy education. Strengthening partnerships and advocating for a sustainable funding model will provide long-term benefits to LEAs statewide and deliver on the goals of the financial education public-private partnership. In alignment with the PDSA model from Langley, we implement iterative cycles to refine and improve the initiative. For example, during a pilot workshop with targeted LEAs, educators are introduced to the Building Native Communities curriculum through an interactive, culturally sensitive training module. Initial surveys collect baseline data on educators' confidence and knowledge levels. After the training, post-surveys will show the impact on teacher efficacy. Feedback from these sessions will inform subsequent iterations, which include the addition of localized case studies. This iterative approach ensures that the program remains responsive to educators' needs while maximizing impact on student outcomes. Plan. The intervention focuses on preparing a professional development workshop for educators, introducing them to the Building Native Communities curriculum from the OESTA Corporation, and equipping them to deliver culturally relevant financial literacy education effectively. Do. The workshop will be implemented in a district identified by the Office of Native Education. Participating educators receive training on financial content and culturally responsive practices. During this phase, data will be collected to assess the workshop's impact on two key areas: teacher financial knowledge, which is measured using the OECD International Network on Financial Education Survey, and teacher self-efficacy. This is measured through the TEBS self-form, a validated instrument assessing educators' confidence in delivering financial literacy content. Study. The results will be analyzed using a paired t-test comparison of pre- and post-intervention scores. Financial knowledge gains and self-efficacy improvements will be assessed to determine the effectiveness of the workshop. Additionally, narrative feedback from participants will provide qualitative insights into areas of refinement. Act. Based on the findings and partnering with the Office of Native Education and OESTA, the workshop model will be adjusted to address identified gaps or opportunities for improvement. This refined version will then be scaled to additional local education agencies, or LEAs, ensuring the intervention's applicability and impact are sustained across diverse educational contexts. The data analysis for this project utilizes sample data as the initiative is in its early stages. To measure the effectiveness of the financial literacy workshop, we'll employ a paired t-test to compare pre- and post-assessment results for both teacher self-efficacy and financial knowledge. The paired t-test provides statistical validation by identifying significant differences between the pre- and post-intervention scores. Based on sample data, the first chart illustrates teacher self-efficacy improvements measured by the TEBS self-assessment tool. On average, teacher self-efficacy increased by 8.2%, with some individuals showing gains as high as 18%. These results would suggest that the workshops effectively enhance educators' confidence in delivering financial literacy education. The second chart focuses on changes in financial knowledge scores. Topics include interest rates, inflation, and risk management. The sample data shows improvements of 26, 28, and 36% respectively. These gains would reflect the workshop's success in equipping educators with a deeper understanding of essential financial concepts. While these results would be promising, they represent sample data sets. Any data will need to be validated with larger data sets in subsequent iterations of the project. The use of the paired t-test ensures that the observed improvements are statistically significant and not the result of random variation. Scaling and sustaining this initiative requires strategic planning and leveraging partnerships. Our approach includes expanding the program to additional LEAs by utilizing the feedback from initial pilots to refine the curriculum and training model. Sustainability is supported through diversified funding streams, including state grants, tribal partnerships, and private sponsorships. Collaboration with organizations like OESTA provide both cultural authenticity and practical scalability. We also emphasize building capacity within local communities by training a network of educators who can mentor others, creating a ripple effect that ensures long-term program impact. Key takeaways. This project seeks to identify and address root causes leading to effective implementation of financial literacy education for all students. The Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle provides a framework for implementation and iterative change to support the intervention. Scaling and sustainability are essential for systemic, long-term support of financial literacy education in the state. This initiative is more than a program. It's a commitment to empowering communities through financial literacy. By addressing systemic barriers, leveraging culturally relevant resources, and fostering collaboration, we aim to create meaningful and lasting change. Together, this can equip educators to inspire a generation of financially literate and empowered students. Thank you for joining me for this presentation and proposed Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. To learn more or get involved in financial education, please visit the Washington State Financial Education Public-Private Partnership website at www.fep.org or feel free to contact me directly.